Hello everyone, Dakoba here, and welcome back to Satisfactory. Now previously we had built this large turbofuel power plant, which you can see here just in the distance, and it is churning away, providing tons of power for us. Just there on the edge of it, we have a Caterium factory we built. It means we now have access to AI limiters and high-speed connectors and all of the technology that those will grant us, things like smart splitters and geothermal power. And geothermal power is one of the things we'll be looking at today, but our main focus is going to be on setting up an aluminum factory. Now, aluminum is sort of the gateway technology for phase 4 of the game, and today we're going to be building our first aluminum factory, which will provide everything we need to set up our basic aluminum production and give us access to the all-clad aluminum sheets for our Mark V belts and a number of other technologies. So let's get over here to the hub and take a look at what we have. All right, now at the end of our last episode, we went ahead and unlocked bauxite refinement. That gives us the ability to scan for bauxite and raw quartz. It also gives us the ability to map out our production chains for each of the different components of producing aluminum. And these all-clad aluminum sheets and aluminum casings are the major goal for today's episode. The all-clad aluminum sheet is going to be great because that's used for our Mark V belt material. And the aluminum casings are a component in a few things that we'll want to build, but notably are a component part of other production lines. So we'll want to make sure that wherever we build aluminum casings, we have the ability to send them on, because we won't be using very many ourselves, but they are used in all kinds of later recipes. Now, before we get into the actual production of aluminum, I want to spend a little bit of time exploring, because if we take a look at our recipes in the refinery and take a look at this alumina solution recipe, you can see that this is going to require bauxite and water. And that's true no matter what. We're always going to need bauxite and water. However, that's only the first step. That gives us alumina solution and silica. The next step is aluminum scrap, which takes that alumina solution, combines it with coal to produce aluminum scrap and water. So we already have some more interesting production chains going on than we've seen before. Where things get really interesting is over here in the foundry, and our final step, making the aluminum ingots, where we need the aluminum scrap as well as silica. Now, the issue here is that many of these production steps produce things that are used elsewhere in the chain. So for example, this recipe produces water, but it doesn't produce enough water to make the alumina solution. And similarly, this recipe produces silica, but it doesn't produce enough silica to make the aluminum ingots. And so the result is that these actually significantly complicate the production chain for aluminum. The good news is that there are a number of alternate recipes that simplify this. So for example, there are a couple of alternates that remove silica from the production chain altogether, which is good because if you take a look at the map and do a quick scan for quartz and for bauxite, what you'll find is that they don't coexist anywhere on the map. They're kilometers apart in every case. And so wherever you want to build your aluminum factory, you need to be moving either the quartz or the bauxite or both quite a long ways. All of the bauxite is found in this sort of central column. All of the quartz is located either north or south. So that is something that we will want to take the time to hunt those hard drives down in order to get those recipes, because they make aluminum production so much simpler. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be very simple because, as mentioned, the aluminum scrap recipe produces water. And this is the first time we're going to be dealing with water as a byproduct, although it's not going to be the last. And water as a byproduct is tricky because it is the first time we can't simply delete the byproducts. So far, we've had a lot of byproducts coming out of our oil refineries, but those have always been in the form of either heavy oil residue or polymer resin or petroleum coke. And in all of those cases, we can simply dump it into an awesome shop. Now, the heavy oil residue, of course, you can't sink directly, but you can turn it into petroleum coke in order to sink it, or into fuel and burn it up. So you sort of have this built-in way to do that. With water, there is no such way that we can simply take water and destroy it. It's going to be much more challenging. Now, we do have a couple of options. We could package it and then sink it, but that means we'll have to have plastic on site that doesn't occur anywhere else in the production chain. And then there are a few other options for us. And so, for example, if we pop on over here to the MAM and take a look, we can see we have a couple of these recipes, like wet concrete, which allows us to combine water with concrete or with limestone to produce concrete. which we could then sink if we want. So wet concrete is really good for that because, like I said, there are several production chains that actually produce water as a byproduct. And since limestone is everywhere on the map, it's ubiquitous, this is a great recipe for dealing with the excess water wherever we're at. So that's something we'll definitely be looking at. As an alternative, since we're already going to be bringing in coal as part of the same process, we can simply divert some of that coal and pair it with the water to burn it up in a coal power plant. And I think that might be what we do today, but we'll have to take a look at the design. But either way, our first task is going to be to try to simplify this production chain as much as we can by hunting some hard drives. So let's go ahead and head out exploring, looking for some more hard drives, as well as more Mercer spheres and summer sloops. Because in addition to that, I would love to unlock some more technologies like the Alien Power Augmenter, as well as increasing our upload and dimensional depot. Now, before we head out, there is one more thing I want to do, and that's going to be over here in the Caterium tree. I want to make sure we unlock our Geothermal Generator. See, these geysers are found all over the map. They're everywhere. And we can use the Geothermal Generator to capture the geysers and produce power. Now, they don't produce very much power, but they do produce a little bit. And if we are able to build a large number of generators all across the map and wire them into our power grid, they can provide a substantial boost to us. And so that is something that we are going to be looking at as we go exploring today. So let's go ahead and add this to our to-do list so that we can find all the items we're going to need. Looks like we have them all. We just need to get them into our inventory so we can unlock this. Let's go ahead and upload some of this stuff to the dimensional depot to make room. You'd be able to come on over here and under Caterium unlock the Geothermal Generator. Now we'll sort of keep this in our pocket for now, and when we find a geyser node, we'll go ahead and drop one down and take a closer look at it. Now, the other items I wanted to unlock before we head out are the crystal oscillator, because we're going to be hunting out some hard drives, and soon we're going to need crystal oscillators, and some of the alternates might be valuable for us to have. So we'll pick that one up as well. Unfortunately, until we get production of those, most of the rest of this tree is going to remain locked to us, so we'll have to revisit that later. But here in Alien Technology, I think we have the summer sloops and the SAM fluctuators and the computers to unlock the Alien Power Augmenter. So we can drop that down. We can get that unlocked and take a look at it. There we go. Now, the Alien Power Augmenter is a really interesting one. Oh, I also wanted to show you guys, I did add another mod to my save game file. This is a daytime control mod. It's called Sky UI, and all it does is let you change the time of day. I noticed in a previous video just how dark it got at night, so I set this in so that we can set our time of day so that we don't see that interfering with our production processes, our camera work, things like that. So not a gameplay altering mod directly, although there are a few things in the game that are based on time of day. So for example, there are certain places where spiders will spawn at night, or stingers as they're called. And then also, and this is something I can show you guys real quick over here, the various berries, the pale berries and the barrel nuts will actually respawn at midnight each day. So if we set this to 11:56, for example, just let that tick up. And so this one could be considered a cheat, but I don't think we need to worry too much about that, as pale berries aren't that valuable. Nor are the barrel nuts. But as far as I know, those are the only two things that are affected by time of day outside of lighting, is the respawn of those barrel nuts and pale berries. And then, like I said, certain spider spawns will happen at night. But this will make sure that we have plenty of daylight, and so things are easy to see, easy to follow, easy to track. And I also like the idea that if I want to see how my factory looks, like say I want to do a lighting pass on this factory, put in some lights around the place, the ability to turn it to night and see how that lighting is going to affect things could be very valuable there. And so that's something else with this one. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at this Alien Power Augmenter. Now, this is a really powerful building, arguably one of the most powerful in the game. So let me see if I can find a place where I can set it down. It's actually quite large, as you can see. There we go. Now, the Alien Power Augmenter produces 500 megawatts of power, but that's not all. The bigger effect that it has is that it boosts the power production of any structure on its power network by 10%, including itself. So it actually produces 550 right out of the gate. But one of the things we can look at, if we come on over here, we can see that we're currently producing 18,525. If we hook this up, we will see another 1,850 added onto this, plus the 550 from the Alien Power Augmenter. And if we take a look at that, you can see that jump right there. Now, what's really crazy about this is that this is actually a stacking buff. If we were to build a second Alien Power Augmenter, which we don't have the summer sleeps for at this time, then this would apply an additional 10% on top of it, but it's multiplicative. It would actually take this as the new baseline and build the next one on top of that. And so you can get some pretty ridiculous numbers for it. Now, what we're going to be using this for today is to, it looks like it's got a summer sleep there in the middle of it. Okay, well, I didn't know that would happen. Interesting, because that is cool. Fascinating. All right. Well, as I was saying, the cool thing about this is that these Alien Power Augmenters produce 550 megawatts of power, and that is more than enough for us to open any drop pod in the game that uses power as sort of its locking mechanism. So as long as we take the ingredients for that with us, then we should be just fine. Now, there's one more thing I want to do before we head out, and that is set up a liquid biofuel refinery here at our starter base, so that we can, and this is one we're going to be running manually. We're not going to be doing a whole lot of automation here, although we'll try and take advantage of our biofuel power plant in order to fuel it. But that will give us some extra exploration options. And so the next thing we're going to be building is a liquid biofuel factory. Now, this isn't going to be a full factory. This is just going to be a little implement here at our base where we will plug in a few machines in order to create some liquid biofuel for us, which is going to be a little bit more useful in our jetpack than our liquid fuel, or than our packaged fuel. So we will start off by placing down some foundations over here near a water source, which is what we will need in order to get this thing constructed. Then we can set down a refinery here. Take a look at the liquid biofuel recipe. So this is going to require water and solid biofuel, and it will produce liquid biofuel. Now, the liquid biofuel itself isn't the most valuable thing, so we're going to pair this with a packager right over here. And then we are also going to place down a constructor to assemble some packaging for us. Last but not least, we'll set up a water extractor over here. And then make sure we have everything set up. And that should work well for us. Let's go ahead and get everything hooked up to power. And so the last thing we need is the solid biofuel. And so that is something that can be a little bit more interesting. Now, we do have solid biofuel production over here on the other side of our factory. And so what I wonder if what we want to do is divert this over and through. Let's see if we can get an underground pathway that will get us all the way over there. Go. All right, let's replace these floors. Use the 1 meter floors so that there's at least plausible, so that it's at least plausible that the foundations remain there. Leave that one off. Go. And just like that. All right, as a final step, we'll go ahead and place a lift on this so that we get this added into our dimensional depot. And we should now have easy access to all the liquid biofuel we will ever need. Now, these aren't strictly infinite because we are manually supplying both the plastic for the containers as well as the biomass. But we, at this point, we're talking about thousands and thousands of units of biofuel. So I am not concerned about us running out anytime soon. And with what we already have set up in our dimensional depot, we're never going to run short again. Now, with that packaged liquid biofuel feeding our jetpack, which we can now set as the limit, that's going to give us a big advantage because that lasts a lot longer. It doesn't provide much extra lift compared to fuel, but it has a much, much longer burn time. And so we can demonstrate this with a quick test. If we say we are going to start here and set with a full tank of liquid biofuel, let's just go ahead and build walls until we run vertically out of fuel. There we go. Now, if we switch our jetpack over to regular packaged fuel, we only make it that high. So that is the difference between liquid biofuel and regular fuel. And that is why this was worth the effort. But we're getting tons of water, plenty of solid biofuel still coming in. Our dimensional depot has sort of filled to overflow its first stack. So one stack is plenty. We still have several stacks of plastic, and we can always just chuck in more whenever we come by. Now, it's not like we're going to run out of plastic anytime soon, so we'll just keep filling that in. And then same with biomass over on the other side as well. If we want, we can even take advantage of this recipe in order to maximize that by placing the biomass from alien protein in here. That'll use that summer sloop in order to make sure we are getting tons and tons of biomass out of here, back to the point where this really needs to is going to be substantially limited by our belt speed. So that's something else we will need to contend with over here. But it can't even process one, producing 7,500 biomass per minute. So I think we should be okay there. But right now I really want to get this aluminum factory built. So we're going to go ahead and leave the creature combat on default for now, and just see what we face as we head out into the world and see what challenges await us. Let's go ahead and start by doing a scan for bauxite and seeing where we can find some. Now, I happen to know that most of the bauxite is located in a band along the center of the map, so I'm guessing we'll find several nodes just to the south of us here. Yeah, so there's one there, one a bit further south, and there. So these bands, this one is going to be up in the red jungle, which is pretty scary. These ones should be a little bit easier to get, and we'll have to figure out how we want to bring them all together. But let's head down there and scan for our other resources and see if there's anything we can come up with that will give us what we need going forward. All right, and let's do a scan for bauxite, see what we can find. All right, we got some just a couple hundred meters away. Well, something's taking a shot at us. Didn't see what it was. Let's go ahead and take care of this alpha hatcher over here. As long as we're crouching, we should have no trouble sort of picking it off. I think I see the bauxite just there, which is good news. So let's see if there's any other dangerous enemies close by. Not seeing anything just yet, so I think we're okay. Let's hover on over there, see if there's anything awaiting us. A couple of spitters. Nothing we can't handle. There we go. All right, so we have our bauxite here, and this is a normal bauxite node. Now, we currently only have access to the tier 2 miners, although we should be getting the tier 3 in fairly short order. So that will open this up for us a little bit. Let's go ahead, use some Nobelisk to take care of this other spitter up here. Well, that just happened. All right, we are going to leave that guy alone, wherever he is, over there, and just take a look at this bauxite. So we've got our bauxite and we've got our water here. So this is a decent place for us to build a factory. It's a little bit dangerous, but it's quite pretty. So we might be able to do something here. All right, I've been doing a fair bit more exploring. If we open up the map, you can see I've actually been through quite a bit of the red forest and jungle and started to dip a little bit further south. I think I want to spend a little more time later today exploring and get down into the plains just to get some more Mercer spheres and some more hard drives and things so that we can unlock some of those dimensional depot upgrades and things. But as far as the aluminum factory goes, I have made, I think, some decisions. See, I've also been over here in the Titan Forest looking around in the swamp, and there is a number of resources right in here along this large river that are going to be really valuable for us. And what's cool is that even here on this topographic map, you can sort of see where the landscape is. That's how a topographic map works. And so each of these lines represents a single point of elevation. And so where the lines are sort of very close together is a more steep elevation change, and where they're sort of evenly spaced then a little bit farther apart is much slower and more gradual. And so we can use that to read that this is where we have our phase 3 space elevator factory. And we have a train line that cuts across right through the center of the map here. Well, we've got another sort of natural path branching off of that. And if we follow that and watch these elevation changes, we can sort of see that there are some natural pathways through here into the Titan Forest. And then from within the Titan Forest, we could head either up directly to our coal power plant, or we could continue on south all the way down here. And each of these has some really interesting properties to it in terms of what resources are available. So for example, there's some SAM ore over here, there's some copper somewhere up in these hills. And over here, there's a ton of bauxite. I don't have it marked on my map. I wish I had placed the pings when I found it. But this will also give us the ability to cross this river and head down into the swamp in a natural way, or to travel further south down into the grassy plains. And so because we have this sort of natural pathway here, I think this is where we are going to travel, because that pathway is also, like, right along this is everything we need for aluminum. We've got copper for the all-clad aluminum sheets, we have coal, and we have bauxite. And then we can also set up anywhere along here because this river is deep enough to accommodate the water extractors. And it also takes us right back over to our aluminum factory, where we already have a large amount of infrastructure, and it ends up being quite close to our starter base, which is right up here. So I think that is the plan, is we're going to run our train line down through the Titan Forest, pick up those resources, and set up our aluminum factory on the shores of this lake, which was my sort of original plan all along. I think that building out this shelf forest right along that ravine that's just south of our base is sort of what I had planned to do for this phase of the game, and I think that's what I'm going to carry on with. And so we'll be building our aluminum factory somewhere in there. All right, I've been doing a bit more exploring and working through those hard drives, and I did come up with a couple of really interesting recipes. And one of them I want to highlight right now are actually two of these. These are both fantastic recipes. The pure aluminum ingot recipe is one that I definitely want to take today, and I'm actually going to take that right now, because what that does is it removes the need to bring in silica or quartz. Because remember, the production step from the aluminum scrap into aluminum ingots is what requires silica, and we don't produce enough silica through the previous production steps in order to do that. So this, by removing the need for that silica altogether, makes things much easier. Now, this is somewhat less efficient, but for the scale of the factory that I want to build today, which is, again, just going to be our starter factory just to provide for ourselves and for our first sort of external part factory, I think this is going to be just fine. The other recipe here, though, is very valuable. That's the electrode aluminum scrap. And what it does is it replaces coal in the production chain with petroleum coke, and it is also more efficient to boot. Now, it does make things a little bit more complex because petroleum coke isn't something that you just have lying around in most places. It's a byproduct, whereas coal is sort of mined directly. You have to take crude oil, turn it into heavy oil residue, and then turn that into the petroleum coke. But that's a fairly simple production chain, and we can get tons and tons of it very cheaply. And so this is definitely something we're going to want to be picking up very soon. However, because these are on the same hard drive, we're going to take the pure aluminum ingot recipe right now, and then hopefully that electrode scrap will come up very soon. So let's continue exploring a little bit more. I don't think I've picked up this hard drive yet, so let's pop on down here. I did, after the earlier mishap, turn off critter hostility, so not really worried about that. Here's another hard drive for us. Oh, got some iron rebar here, and no, sorry. So we can go ahead and just delete the crash debris, so we don't think this is an unexplored drop pod, and then can head on back, and then we can carry on with our explorations. All right, I've come back to base and been looking at where we want to build our factory. I was actually playing around with some layouts up there in the hills, but I think we're going to actually end up building down here, a little closer to the ground. But I was playing around with a couple of things. First of all, I've decided I'm going to use the inverted fix-it color swatch. It's the concrete structure swatch. It basically uses white and orange, similar to the default fix-it, except that it uses white with the fix-it orange, and I quite like how it looks. I think it's pretty clean, and I think it's going to pair nicely with the structural motif we have going on over here. But you can also see we got the sloppy alumina alternate recipe here, and this is huge. This is going to take just bauxite and water and produce only alumina solution. So there's no silica byproduct here, which actually makes this significantly more efficient. If we take a look at the default recipe, then it's 1-to-1 between bauxite and alumina solution. And with sloppy alumina, we take 200 and get 240 back. So it's an extra 20% alumina solution per bauxite that we bring in. And of course, water is sort of all over the map. We're never going to run out of water, so that's not something we need to worry about being stingy with. But bauxite is a little bit more rare, and so this is a great recipe there. Now, I haven't seen the electrode aluminum scrap come up, so we're going to be using the default recipe for this, but that actually pairs really nicely. If we take a look at the alumina solution, or the sloppy alumina recipe, you can see that 200 bauxite gives us 240 alumina solution, and the aluminum scrap recipe takes 240 alumina solution. So we can use one refinery each and just bring in 200 bauxite. That'll also require us to bring in 120 coal, and that will give us 360 aluminum scrap. Now, if we then take a look at the smelter, where our pure aluminum ingot recipe is, we can see that that uses 60. So we have a nice round number. We'll take 6 smelters, or I think we may use 3 because it's of size constraints and spacing, but and just overclock them. But regardless, it's a nice round number that will give us 100, that will result in us getting a total of 180 aluminum ingots. And if we then take a look at the recipes that use aluminum ingots, like the aluminum casing, you can see aluminum casing takes 90 per minute, and the all-clad aluminum sheet takes 30 per minute, which means we're working with these nice round numbers, multiples of 30 across the board, and that just makes it for a really nice and convenient production chain. So I think it is time for us to go ahead and get this thing built. Our first step is going to be to lay down some new rail lines. and then we'll come back on over here and construct a factory. Let's get into it. All right, and that is an aluminum factory all complete. Let's pop on over and take a look. Now, we haven't had another train come back through yet, and the first train that came in didn't have copper on it, so we'll have to make sure that we are getting everything we need through this station. Let's double check that our platforms here are set to unload. Yep, so we should be getting copper into the second platform, and then bauxite and coal into the first platform. Now, we're using a smart splitter here to make sure that our bauxite and coal continue to flow, and also to separate them out. So we have our bauxite coming into this storage container and coal into the second storage container there. And then those are going to provide for all of the aluminum ingots that we use, which should already be producing some aluminum casings for us. We have a bunch in our dimensional depot now. Aluminum casings. Why don't we have aluminum casings? We should be getting aluminum ingots. Oh, we forgot to hook up these other smelters. That's where they'll get you every time. All right. All right, so that should take care of that. Let's go ahead and take a look at our map and see where our aluminum bullet train is. Looks like it's over at our coal factory, which is its first stop after this station. So it's just getting started on its route. Let's pop on over and see if we can intercept it, and we'll take a look at the route it's following and how we are getting some of the materials over to this station. And then we'll take a look at the factory itself and see how we're processing. All right, there's something interesting going on to me, and that is that we have our aluminum train doing something funny over here. It appears to be coming down to our space elevator component factory to do its turnaround, which means we have misplaced something on our track, because there should be a turnaround right before it gets to the copper factory, right after it gets to the copper factory rather. So let's pop on down and see if we can get that. That explains the delay, is that it's getting quite a bit of extra travel time added to its route there. So we can see it coming in here. Let's see if we can catch up with it with some well-placed slide jumps. Like we've got a bean going for a ride on it as well. Oh, it got away from us. We'll catch up to it at the copper plant. Keep your eyes on the bean. So I went ahead and followed the train, and I figured out that the issue is somewhere with this junction, and I think I have a notion for what it is. If we take a look at the block signal, what we can see is that these separate paths, this turnaround that's meant to go under the track, is actually counting as part of both track lines, and it's actually merging both of them onto a single one. So you can see there, we've got the dark pink on the right and the light pink on the left. Over here, we've got the blue on the right and the yellow on the left. But in this case, we have both lines as part of the same block. And I think that what that is doing is causing this train to struggle with navigating through this section. Now, in this case, it's managed to make it up to the copper factory, but it took a couple of extra trips down to the space elevator part factory in order to get there. So this tells me two things. Number one, this turnaround is non-functional. I think it's just cutting too close to the tracks, which you can see here. I had designed these rail risers to allow the train to have enough height to pass underneath it in this sort of junction, but on the downhill slope, that doesn't work because the track height just cuts too close to the ground. So I think I'm going to need to redesign this intersection, and looking at it, I think what I may do is actually just have the track divert back up here and then sort of hook up directly to that copper and have the copper station itself function as the turnaround point, and then possibly also have it merge back on in case we need to take that copper somewhere else later. But and then just delete this junction altogether, I think is the plan there. All right, now during the time lapse, you may have noticed that I set down a fuel or a geothermal generator right here. These things are fun, make a really cool sound when you're near them, right there. And one thing about these is that you want to make sure you're pairing them with batteries, with these power storages. And the number of power storages you need is based on the type of the quality of the geyser that you're planting on. See, what this is going to do is it's going to sort of have a sine wave where it sort of fluctuates between 100 and 300 megawatts of power production. And in order to balance that out, what we can do is have these power storages, which will effectively allow that to average out over time to whatever the middle value is, 200 units. And so in order to do that and store it properly, you need to use the correct number of power storages. And the number you need is the difference between the two numbers. So each of these power storages has a maximum charge rate of 100 megawatts or a maximum charge capacity of 100 megawatts. And so since there's a difference between the 100 and 300 of 200 megawatts, that means we need 2 power storages. This is a normal geyser, and so you need 2 power storages for a normal geyser. An impure one, you only need 1. And on a pure one, you need 4. So that was something that we built during the time lapse there. And we're just going to continue dropping these down whenever we come across a geyser, because it will add up to several thousand megawatts of power production, as well as some extra storage just to protect against buffers and also to protect against peaks and surges in usage, which as we go, we'll start to see more of, because there's a number of sort of variable consumption buildings, and even trains themselves are variable consumption. They have the regenerative braking and then also consume more power when they're going downhill. Now, one of the other cool things about our blueprint is that it does include hypertubes. And so as I am laying down track, I'm also trying to hook up those hypertubes in order to help us get around a little bit faster and a little bit more easily. So we can follow this hypertube all the way down to our next stop. Here we go. All right, we are here, and we have a train that is just coming back from our aluminum factory. So let's go ahead and follow it around to all of the different stations. So here we have our Titan Forest coal supply. This is the first stop on this train's timetable. If we take a look at the timetable, you can see that we are here at the Titan Forest coal supply. We'll then be going to copper supply, then bauxite supply, and then to the factory. Now, each of these stations is currently perfectly tuned for this train line, although I am running 2 trains just because we were, the time delay between trains was such that we were completely filling this sort of front cargo car with just coal. And that wasn't leaving any room for bauxite to come in. And so by doing it with a second train, we are picking up the coal effectively twice as often, and each train is carrying half of it. And so that is a way that we can increase throughput there. Now at this point, the train does come on back here into the Titan Forest, and you can see our copper supply, which we did talk about up there, and I did make the modification to the route. Now, a few points of clipping that still need to be addressed, but overall this is a much cleaner solution, and the train is working as intended. All right, departing the copper depot, we can start heading on back, and we may even get to see our other aluminum train passing by on the other rail, which is always a treat. Looks like it's stopped at our coal station there, so it's loading up on coal, but that's all right. Now here we're tapping a normal bauxite node. There are also a couple of impure nodes to the left, and up on the cliffs just above us, there's another pure node up there. So this is a place we can actually do quite a bit. So even though we're not using the second station here, I did include a second freight station so that we could draw from those additional bauxite nodes pretty easily. But we're actually, one of the things I'm most excited about is that we're quite close to unlocking drones, and drones have some really interesting potential for us, especially now that they are a little bit more versatile and can take a lot of different fuel types. And so that will make using them much, much easier. All right, and with a fresh load of copper, bauxite, and coal, we are now in a place that this train will now unload, and we will be able to see those resources flowing into our storage containers here and providing for our factory. Now let's go through how the factory works. This is about as simple as you can make aluminum production, and I'm very pleased with how it's turned out. So we have a water extractor drawing out some water, and we are bringing in our bauxite and turning those into sloppy alumina. This water extractor is producing precisely the 200 units of water we need. And so this recipe should be fully efficient because we are also mining exactly 200 units of bauxite. Now that alumina solution is then being sent via this pipeline into our next refinery, where it's being paired with some coal, and the coal is coming in through that storage container. And so the bauxite and coal are coming in on the same train carriage, or same train station, train platform. And so we're using a smart splitter here to split that so that bauxite flows forward and coal flows to the right. Anything that doesn't fit goes over into a sink so nothing gets backed up. You know, we don't fully back up on bauxite and run dry on coal, for example. And so this works fine for that. Now that coal and alumina solution produce a bit of water and aluminum scrap. The aluminum scrap is then sent on over into these 3 smelters where it's turned into aluminum ingots. All right, now the aluminum ingots that are coming out of these smelters then come on over here, where we are producing 70 aluminum casings per minute in this constructor. And over here we are producing 25 all-clad aluminum sheets or 75 all-clad aluminum sheets per minute. And so this is going to produce tons and tons for us. You can see we've already nearly filled the storage container plus our dimensional depot. And the same is true on this side for the aluminum casing. So we are sitting very nicely in there. Now there are a few other tweaks. And all right, now the last step here is that the byproduct, the water byproduct here, we are processing that by burning it up in some coal power plants using some excess coal that we are sending in. And this has the advantage that if this backs up, then everything will shut down. Like if these all-clad aluminum sheets eventually fill the storage container and shuts this off, then our ingots will back up, our scrap will back up, and this refinery will eventually stop. And that would be a little bit of a bummer because that would mean we wouldn't be getting any water to our coal generators. So these coal generators would shut down. But because the water is sort of the lingering, but because the water is sort of the shutoff mechanic for this, that's not the end of the world. It means that as soon as we draw from those resources, this will start flowing again. As long as we are not backing up our coal line and bauxite line as well, which we shouldn't because of our overflow here, that should be just fine. Now, that's not to say that this couldn't be improved, and that's something I want to take a look at here in a minute. But right now, these production lines are stable. They are working well for us, and they should be perfectly stable given what they are. So I think our next step is going to be to head back to base and unlock a couple of milestones, and in particular those Mark V belts, because I think that there's some places in here that we could benefit from having Mark V belts. All right, back here at the hub, we can absolutely unlock our all-clad or our conveyor belts Mark V. That should be easy. We don't have 50 gas filters. We'll need to either manually craft those if we want the hazmat suit. The inventory slots are the biggest thing there. The hazmat suit and iodine infused filter could be nice because that will let us get into nuclear if we want. And the bigger thing is it'll let us move near uranium. And so there's a lot of places that have lots of uranium clusters that are surrounding a pathway or an ore node that we might want to tap. And having a hazmat suit, even if we're not working with nuclear directly yet, if we want to work in the places where the uranium is at, even if it's something as simple as picking up a Mercer sphere that's guarded by 3 hogs. Now, we should also be able to do our control system development. That'll give us access to the blender, as well as a whole bunch of new parts that we can build. And then I think that is all we can do for now. Everything else will require something from that control system development tier in order to unlock. So the drones, for example, will take radio control units, and same with advanced aluminum production. So let's go ahead and unlock that control system development milestone first, and then while we wait for that to come back, we can take a look at some of the other resources that we'll be looking at. So we can go ahead and send off this milestone. Then we'll see what that has for us. All right, logistics Mark 5. There we go. All right, now we are back here at our aluminum factory, and I have gone ahead and upgraded some of our belts to Mark 5. That's mostly to make sure that we are able to fully unload this cargo platform between train lines. With 2 trains running, we want to make sure that this is fully emptied out before the next train line arrives and we have to unload a second load of cargo. So those Mark 5 belts will make sure that we are able to do that, that any resources that come in are able to fill into these storage containers, completely max them out, and then anything else gets sunk, and that there's always room for the next load of cargo to come in. Now, I had floated the idea of doing some work on these power plants to make sure that they are stable and continue running even after we back up everything else. I think that's something we're going to have to save for next time, as well as for decorating this factory. But before we finish up today, I do want to decorate that factory, the Caterium one we built in our last episode. I'm really pleased with what it's been providing for us, but it is a bit of an eyesore, and so we're going to wrap it up real nice and sort of start expanding this complex and establishing a style and identity for it with a building around that. So I think we will do that to wrap up the episode. But before we get into it, I do want to say a special thanks to everybody who has been supporting the channel. So a special thanks to everybody who has been able to chip in and help out. It means a lot, and I greatly appreciate it. But I think we will jump into this time lapse to wrap up for today. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope that it has made your day just a little bit better. If it has, leave a like and subscribe if you would like to see more. As always, my name is Dakoba, and I hope you have an efficient day. I will see you soon.